evening. Why do you know what? You try to sneak into church all the time. All we notice, you sit in the back. How are you? You doing well? All right. Boy sneaks into town, doesn't want anybody to know. All right, Luke 20. All right, we're going to start Luke 20, verse 9. Because last week in the welcome I did 1 through 8. Hey, I'm pretty good like that, you know. I got to use every opportunity to get this done I can. So, verse 9. We remember Jesus is in the temple. And he was asked by whose authority, and he says, well, what authority John's baptism have? And they were like, well, we don't know. And he says, well, okay, fine. I'm not going to tell you by whose authority I do things. But I will tell you this. He says he went on to tell the people this parable. A man planted a vineyard and rented it to some farmers and went away for a long time. At harvest time, he sent a servant to the tenants so they would give him some of the fruit of the vineyard. But the tenants beat him and sent him away empty-handed. He sent another servant, but that one also they beat and treated shamefully and sent away empty-handed. He sent still a third, and they wounded him and threw him out. Then the owner of the vineyard said, what shall I do? I'll send my son, whom I love. Perhaps they will respect him. But when the tenants saw him, they talked the matter over. This is the heir, they said. Let's kill him, and the inheritance will be ours. So they threw him out of the vineyard and killed him. What then will the owner of the vineyard do to them? He will come and kill those tenants and give the vineyard to others. When the people heard this, they said, God forbid! Jesus looked directly at them and asked, then what is the meaning of that which is written? The stone the builders rejected has become the capstone. Everyone who falls on that stone will be broken to pieces. Anyone on whom it falls will be crushed. The teachers of the law and the chief priests looked for a way to arrest him immediately because they knew he had spoken this parable against them. But they were afraid of the people. So, challenged on authority, Jesus gets back. And then he says, all right, I'm going to tell you a parable. Now, obviously, this parable has a panoramic or a global perspective that deals with everybody, but it's also got a very narrow perspective, doesn't it? When you're listening to this parable, you can go, oh, yeah, that's God, the prophets, Jesus. They killed him. What's God going to do? And so we can see both sides of this, but I think there's a lot that we can learn in this. Amen? So, I think the first aspect is looking at God as the vineyard owner. Who does he give the vineyard to? Yeah, some tenants, some farmers. You know, and now, when you think about it, God, if he's going to have a vineyard, what kind of vineyard do you think he's going to have? A wine vineyard. Yeah, vineyard, okay. But you think he's going to have some junky little vineyard? No. I mean, if this is God's property, he's going to give the best, isn't he? And he gives it over to people so that they will farm and take care of it. Now, knowing our history, if you think about the garden, what does God say in the garden about people? Work it.
Harvest it.
Harvest.
Prune it.
Enjoy it. Prune it. Rule over it. He says, man, you're going to be masters over everything. Now think about the trust that God is giving us. Just for a second. I know we don't talk a whole lot about green and, and I'm not preaching that now you need to go out and save the whales or any of that. But I do want you to think about the trust that God's given you. It's more than just your family. And I tell you what, anybody as a parent understands trust when they have a kid. They're like, wow. Carrie asked me this morning, what's it like to have a 17-year-old son? And honestly, it's humbling. Because I look back and go, man, without God, I don't know what would have happened because, left up to me and my own devices, I'll screw anything up. Give me an angel and he'll become Lucifer pretty quick. And if God's not involved in what we're doing and what I'm doing, and if I'm really not able to surrender things to God, then I'm not going to be able to take care of what's going on around me. But think of what God has entrusted you with. Whether you're married, whether you have children, what you own, the way that you can do your part, just even in the littlest bit by recycling or, I'm not a huge person on this, but honestly, if God has given us this world and entrusted it to us, what are we doing? If God gives us that much trust, what are we doing? Now, the parable here does an amazing job at exposing the heart of man with what God has entrusted him with. You know why we don't think about a lot of this stuff? Because it doesn't apply to us personally. We're so funny about that. If it doesn't apply to us personally, we just kind of put it out of our mind. But when it does apply to you personally, then you're all of a sudden all over it. I could care less what doctors have to go through in order to become doctors or in order to remain doctors. And I don't care how many surgeries they have to perform unless they're doing it on me. Right? All of a sudden now I want to know where you went to school and who trained you and what boards are you certified in and how many times have you done this surgery and I want to make sure you're the best. Are you the best in your field? Would another doctor go to you? That's how you start feeling when it applies to you. Yeah. Isn't that the truth? Yeah. And we can see really the fall of the heart of man here because God gives this vineyard over to these people and he had to have seen these people at some point in time and communicate expectations. And in those expectations that he communicated, he said, look, I'm going to get part of the crop. You're going to have to pay rent. That's what happens when people don't have to pay anything. Can you imagine leaving your house right now saying, move in for free? What would happen to your house?
Trash.
Yeah, it would be trash. Because they wouldn't take care of it. If they've got no stake in it, then people just don't care. They're way more just hands off. So obviously some expectations were communicated, and so he sends his first servant to collect part of the crop. What do they do to that servant? They beat him. Get out of here. So he goes back and reports to the owner, like, look, man, they beat me. I got nothing. So what does God do? What does the man do? All right, let's send somebody else. So he sends somebody else. What do they do to that guy? They beat him and treat him shameful. There's probably some homosexual connotation with that. Yeah. And he comes back and he shares, got nothing. They beat me and treated me shamefully.
And God says, all right, let's try again. I'm going to send another guy. What did they do to that guy? They wound him. They're like, all right, obviously beatings are not enough. Treating him shamefully is not enough. I've got to escalate. So let's stick him with a knife. You know, let's gouge him, let's slash him, let's do something, wound him in some way. So he comes back wounded, broken bones, whatever it is. He comes back wounded, and God says, what am I going to do now? Send my son. They'll respect him. So he sends his son, and what happens? They kill him. Actually, that's right. They conspired and they schemed. And they said, hey, he's only got one son. If we kill him, we get the vineyard. Yeah, very blunt. But it shows a little bit about the human heart, doesn't it? We're funny thinking that we can handle sin. There's a progression here. Does it get better? No. No, it doesn't get better. The progression is that it gets worse, and the funny thing about it, or peculiar, not funny, ha-ha, the peculiar thing about it is they were okay with this. I can't imagine on the day that they agreed to rent the vineyard that they were looking at each other going, ha, we're going to kill this guy's son. No, that's not the way it is. And I don't think any of us just jump into the most heinous thing in our life. It's a progression.
Yes.
It really is a progression. It goes little by little by little, and you think, oh, I can handle it. It's just lust. Yeah, but tomorrow it's adultery.
Yeah.
Nah, that would never happen.
Yeah.
Don't ever say no. I don't care who you are.
Yeah.
I don't care where you think you are in your marriage.
Right.
Lust, if it goes unchecked, will become more.
Yeah.
Oh, it's just a little bit of greed. I mean, think of that. A little bit of greed. All of a sudden becomes... You know, the funny thing is, we don't look at our heart that way. We don't look at our heart that way. We think lofty things or even set lofty goals. And yet, in our hearts, then we don't match that or we don't deal with that. I'll give you an example. We set a hope goal, and the church set the hope goal. We can do $5,000. You know, and in every one of us, we want to. I believe that with all of our hearts. We collected half that, and we're going, why? Because there's something inside of us that's mine. Yeah, I want to, and I want to see us meet this lofty goal, but you're going to pry from my dead fingers. I mean, we don't say that, but that's how we're acting. We're not striving. A few people have said stuff about that, and you know, I completely agree. We can't put something out there and say we're going to do it, and then not do it.
Yeah.
So I don't care if it takes us till next year. We're gonna keep this going, and we're gonna do this because that's what we said as a church, not as a leader to put it to the people. It was a church, and I appreciate those of you that have said something. Because we can't get used to, otherwise, then we're just feeding the sin. We're just, oh yeah, oh whatever. And then we start doing that with everything in our life. We cannot think that this is just going to go away. These guys, they kept getting worse and worse to the point where their reason